yogi left off, and no attempt goes in vain. But in today's session, we will see something very particular, some specific threshold that one must strive to meet so that the opportunities to revive the transcendental process, the opportunities to revive the yogic process that we get, they take us in the direction of transcendental self-realization and not in the materialistic process of improving one's material opulence and condition. So there is a specific quality to the process of yoga that must be practiced, because this entire chapter 6 is about Sankhya Yoga. But Prabhupada in his purports is giving an insight, a clue into the build-up that Krishna is doing towards the climax in this chapter, which will come in the coming weeks. But today we see one small glimpse into that build-up. So we first start with prayers so that we can get into the depths of today's subject. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, titled Sankhya Yoga, text 44. Purva Abhyasena Tena Eva Purvabhyasena Tenaiva Hriyate Hi Avashaha Api Saha Hriyate Hi Avasho Api Sa Jigyasuhu Api Yogasya Shabda Brahma Ativartate Jigyasurapi Yogasya Shabda Brahma Ativartate Purvabhyasena Tenaiva Hriyati Hi Avasho Api Sa Jigyasurapi Yogasya Shabda Brahmati Vartate Purvabhyasena Tenaiva Hriyate Hi Avasho Api Saha Hriyate Hi Avasho Api Saha Jigyasurapi Yogasya Shabda Brahmati Vartate Purvabhyasena Tenaiva Hriyate Hi Avashopi Saha Jigyasurapi Yogasya Shabda Brahmati Vartate Purvabhyasena Tenaiva Hriyate Hi Avashopi Saha Jigyasurapi Yogasya Shabda Brahmati Vartate Purvabhyasena Tenaiva
Hriyate Hi Avasho Api Saha
Hriyate Hi Avashopi Saha
Jignasurapi Yogasya
Jigyasurapi Yogasya
Shabda Brahma Vitartate
Shabda Brahmati Vartate Purvabhyasena Tenaiva
क्रियते हि अवशोऽपि सः
ह्रियते हि अवशोऽपि सः
जिज्ञासुरपि योगस्य
जिज्ञासुरपि योगस्य
शब्दब्रह्माति वर्तते
शब्दब्रह्माति वर्तते
पूर्वाभ्यासेन तेनैव
पूर्वाभ्यासेन तेनैव
ह्रियते हि अवशो हि अपि सः
ह्रियते हि अवशोऽपि सः
जिज्ञासुरपि योगस्य
जिज्ञासुरपि योगस्य
शब्दब्रह्माति वर्तते
शब्दब्रह्माति वर्तते पूर्वाभ्यासेन तेनैव
क्रियते हि अवसोऽपि सः
ह्रियतेऽपि अवशोऽपि सः
जिज्ञासुरपि योगस्य
जिज्ञासुरपि योगस्य
शब्दब्रह्माति वर्तते
शब्दब्रह्माति वर्तते
पूर्वाभ्यासेन तेनैव
पूर्वाभ्यासेन तेनैव
ह्रियते हि अवसोऽपि सः
ह्रियते हि अवशोऽपि सः
जिज्ञासुरपि योगस्य
जिज्ञासुरपि योगस्य
शब्दब्रह्माति वर्तते
शब्दब्रह्माति वर्तते
पूर्वाभ्यासेन तेनैव
पूर्वाभ्यासेन तेनैव
ह्रियते हि अवसोऽपि सः
ह्रियते हि अवशोऽपि सः
जिज्ञासु अपि योगस्य
जिज्ञासुरपि योगस्य
शब्दब्रह्माति वर्तते
शब्दब्रह्माति वर्तते
पूर्वाभ्यासेन तेनैव
पूर्वाभ्यासेन तेनैव
ह्रियते हि अवशोऽपि सः
ह्रियसेऽपि अवशोऽपि सः
जिज्ञासुरपि योगस्य
जिज्ञासुरपि योगस्य
शब्दब्रह्माति वर्तते
शब्दब्रह्माति वर्तते ऑनलाइन पूर्वाभ्यासेन तेनैव ह्रियते हि अवशोऽपि सः जिज्ञासुरपि योगस्य शब्दब्रह्माति वर्तते
पूर्वाभ्यासेन तेनैव
पूर्वाभ्यासेन तेनैव
ह्रियते हि अवसोऽपि सः
ह्रियते हि अवशोऽपि सः
जिज्ञासुरपि योगस्य
जिज्ञासुरपि योगस्य
शब्दब्रह्माति वर्तते
शब्दब्रह्माति वर्तते पूर्व previous abhyasena practice tena by the influence of that eva certainly hriyate is attracted
is attracted.
he
He
surely
surely
avashaha
avashaha
helpless
helpless
api
api
also
also
saha
saha
he he
he
jigyasuhu
jignasuhu
willing to know
willing to know
api
api
so
so
yogasya
yogasya
of yoga
of yoga
shabda brahma
shabda brahma
ritualistic principles of scripture
ritualistic principles of scripture
ativartate
ati vartate
transcends.
transcends.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Translation: by virtue of the divine consciousness of his previous life, he automatically becomes attracted to the yogic principles even without seeking them. Such an inquisitive transcendentalist, striving for yoga, stands always above the ritualistic principles of the scriptures. Translation with repetition. By virtue of the divine consciousness
The divine
of his previous life,
his previous life,
he automatically becomes
he automatically becomes
attracted
attracted
to the yogic principles
to the yogic principles
even without seeking them.
even without seeking them.
Such an inquisitive transcendentalist,
Inquisitive transcendentalist,
striving for yoga,
striving for you,
always
always
stands
stands always
above the ritualistic principles
above the ritualistic principles
of the scriptures.
of the scriptures.
advanced yogis are not very much attracted to the rituals of the scriptures, but they automatically become attracted to the yoga principles which can elevate them to complete Krishna consciousness, the highest yoga perfection. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 3.33.8, such disregard of Vedic rituals by the advanced transcendentalists is explained as follows. Aho bata swapachoto gariyan yajjihvagre vartate namatubhyam te pustapaste juhu shashnurarya brahmanu nuchurnama grananti yethe. O my Lord, persons who chant the holy names of your Lordship are far, far advanced in life, spiritual life. Even if born in families of dog eaters, such chanters have undoubtedly performed all kinds of austerities and sacrifices, bathed in all sacred places, and finished all scriptural studies. The famous example of this was presented by Lord Chaitanya, who accepted Thakur Haridasa as one of his most important disciples. Although Thakur Haridas happened to take his birth in a Muslim family, he was elevated to the post of Namacharya by Lord Chaitanya due to his rigidly attendant principle of chanting the 300,000 holy names of the Lord daily. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And because he chanted the holy name of the Lord constantly, it is understood that in his previous life he must have passed through all the ritualistic methods of the Vedas known as Shabda Brahman. Unless, therefore, one is purified, one cannot take to the principle of Krishna consciousness nor become engaged in chanting the holy name of the Lord, Hare Krishna. Thus ends the wonderful transcendental purport. Om Ajnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So it's a wonderful verse today. Sometimes in Bhagavad Gita we see that but Krishna makes some very important point. And then that important point sometimes takes multiple verses. And often the first verse or one of the verses in that series will be very famous. And then the subsequent verses are supporting that. And sometimes we think it is repetitive. There's not much masala in that. We immediately go to the important verse and then we skip past these smaller verses. One of today's verse appears on the face of it to be one of those verses which is supporting the previous verses that have already been, where Krishna has already made big promises that his devotee is never vanquished. The one who does good is never overcome by evil. He's made two promises. And then he has made this grand statement about the fate of the unsuccessful yogi, how the unsuccessful yogi spends thousands of years in heavenly planets where the pious dwell, very opulent life as per the calculation of the demigods, long life as per the calculation. So on earth it will be even much more longer duration of life. And then he's born in the family, rich aristocratic family, or in the family of advanced transcendentalists, where he can resume the divine, revive his divine consciousness and continue his journey of spiritual progress. So all these things have already been said. What is left to be said? It appears that Krishna is dragging on. Sometimes you see in Mahabharata episodes, Ramayana episodes, The whole episode will go on, we're dragging on, we just, one person will be looking at the other person will be looking at the other person, and you'll be wondering why this is going on into 500 episodes when matter could have been finished quickly. So it appears like today's verse, there's nothing much, the same thing repeated. But actually something very, very insightful is being said by Krishna. Very important verse. This is very, very crucial. Let us take a look at it. Purvabhyasena thainaiva hriyate hi avasho api saha jigyasurapi yogasya shabda brahmati vartate. So Krishna is making a very important point, and Prabhupada gives wonderful explanation and context behind that, which is very enlightening. So let us pay attention to this. Purvabhyasena thainaiva. Purva abhyasa. So by previous practice. Previous practice means the previous lives, in the previous opportunities that were given in practicing spiritual path, the path of self-realization, path of perfection, path of yoga, and whatever practice has been done in the previous lives. Due to that, when a person gets the second opportunity or the third opportunity, multiple opportunities in different lifetimes, what happens in that lifetime? Purvabhyasena tena eva. Tena is by the influence of the previous practice. The practices that have been done in the previous life, by the influence of that, eva. Eva is translated as certainly. Krishna is giving complete confidence. You can be fully confident that something is going to happen. Whatever practice you have done in the previous life, because of the influence of the previous practice, something is absolutely certain. And what is that something absolutely certain? Hriyate hi avasho api saha. Attraction, hriyate, attraction, surely, again, see this, Krishna is again using another word, surely, avasho api saha. What is this avasho word? Let us look at this word avasho. Avashaha. You might have heard this Hindi word vivash. Vivashaha. Vivash. Not vivashaha. Vivash in Hindi. What does it mean? Vivash ho jana. Forced, helplessly you have to do that. There is no choice. Somebody called me, someone came home and then they invited me to their house. They said it in such a way I could not refuse. I was forced to go. मैं जाने के लिए विवश हो गया. So that you are forced, helplessly forced. You cannot say no in that situation. So that is the word that is being used here. Avashaha, helpless. Something happens helplessly. What happens? Attraction. Attraction happens certainly. So attraction to what? Purvabhyasena tenaiva hriyate hi avasho api saha jigyasu api yogasya. So this person who is inquisitive, an inquisitive transcendentalist, he becomes attracted to yogasya. Attracted to, and in the translation, if you see the word-to-word translation, yogasya is translated as of yoga. That is attraction of yoga. But if you see the actual translation below, Prabhupada says he automatically becomes attracted to the yogic principles. So it's a very important, very, very nuanced presentation of this verse, of the meaning of this. And let us understand this a little better. Yogic principles, becomes attracted to the yogic principles. And then he further clarifies in the translation below, even without seeking them. See, that is just a clarification to the word avashaha. So the avashaha is being explained in the translation below in two ways. First is by the use of the word automatic. He automatically becomes attracted. And the second part, even without seeking them. So automatic and even without seeking, both of them are describing the use of the word avashaha. And it's a very important word in this point that Krishna is making. And then Prabhupada is further explaining that such an inquisitive transcendentalist, jigyasuhu, striving for yoga, shabda brahma ativartate. Shabda brahma is translated here as ritualistic principles of the scriptures. Now this is a very important aspect, that if somebody were to try to read Bhagavad Gita, as we have seen many times before, there are many words that are used, Sanskrit words, that have multiple meanings depending upon the context. So the word Shabda Brahman has been used in the context of the transcendental sound vibration. In some places, it is translated as the transcendental sound vibration Om. And in some places, it is a transcendental sound representation of the Supreme Lord. It has been translated in that way also in Bhagavatam. And here, it is being translated as ritualistic principles of the scriptures. And the reason is the next word after that is ativartate, transcends. So if somebody is transcending Shabda Brahma, because if you translate Shabda Brahma as something that's transcendental sound, then how can you transcend transcendental sound? It is not possible. So Shabda Brahma here is translated as ritualistic principles of the scriptures. Because the Vedas, they are also coming from the Supreme Lord. So therefore, that is also in a way transcendental. But the principles which are given in the Vedas, they are ritualistic principles. That gives us a path for self-realization, no doubt. But that path is based on ritualistic principles, and we will see how in greater detail what is the difference between that and the yogic principles that are being talked about here. So if you see in this, there are two principles that are being talked about in this verse. One is the yogic principles, and the other is the ritualistic principles of the scriptures. By the virtue of the divine consciousness of his previous life, he automatically becomes attracted to the yogic principles, even without seeking them. Such an inquisitive transcendentalist striving for yoga stands always above the ritualistic principles of the scriptures. So, last week, the last class, we saw some examples of how a person was given multiple opportunities. The examples that we saw, we talked about Bilva Mangal Thakur, we talked about Vishwamitra, and then we talked about Jada Bharata, King Bharata, who got 3 opportunities. Bilva Mangal Thakur, he got 2 opportunities. The previous, the life in which, of course, we don't know exact count, but then it is said in the place where Srila Prabhupada quotes in the lecture, where he's talking about Bilva Mangal Thakur, he gives the example and says that in his previous life, because of the divine consciousness cultivated by Bilva Mangal Thakur in his previous life, the moment he heard the word Krishna uttered by a prostitute that he was very much attached to, immediately all his previous divine consciousness got restored, and he completely abandoned all the abominable activities that he was engaged in, all the breaking of regulative principles, all of that he completely stopped and became a pure devotee. And his devotional life was completely restored just by hearing the word Krishna from the mouth of a prostitute. And then we saw how King Bharata, after having led a very virtuous life of a Rajarshi for 10 million years. It's mind-boggling how somebody can be alive for 10 million years, but it is mentioned in Bhagavatam. He was alive for 10 million years. After that, he abdicated his throne, and then he went to the forest and performed meditation. But then he got attached to a deer, and then he had to take birth as a deer. But by the mercy of the Lord, he remembered all his previous efforts, and then he stayed close to the same pious place in Haridwar, near Haridwar, in the near what is the river? Gandaki river. And then he was given yet another opportunity. When he completed his dear life, he was born as Jada Bharata, and he attained perfection. We also saw the life of Vishwamitra, where his divine consciousness was revived right in the same lifetime itself. That simply by seeing the newborn child that was presented to him by Menaka, immediately his consciousness was revived, and he was able to continue his sadhana from where he left off. So we saw these examples, and there's a wonderful quote from last verse's purport in 6.43 that I would just like to repeat. This was also the theme of the last class. By the grace of the Lord, the transcendentalist gets repeated opportunities for complete perfection in Krishna consciousness. So this opportunity was made available to all these people. And in the very first opportunity, why did they not take it? Some of them took it, but some of them took it and then gave it up voluntarily. The king Bharata's example is one where he had the opportunity right in front of him. He gave up the kingdom. He did the meditation, but as a deer, infant deer without any protection came to him, he voluntarily gave up devotional service and took to the protection of the deer. And there were many occasions on which he was reminded actually of the fact that he is giving up and he's not able to perform the devotional service. But each time his mind played tricks on him, and the mind gave various justifications as to why protecting the deer is more important, is a bigger dharma, is a more important activity than the devotional activity that he was performing. And Bharat Maharaj had the choice to listen to the mind or to listen to his consciousness. But he chose to listen to the mind, and voluntarily he gave up the practice of Krishna consciousness. But Krishna did not give up on him and gave him multiple opportunities. So the point of the last class is that we are given all these different opportunities, and it is up to us to utilize it or not utilize it. The circumstances are given favorable to us, are made favorable by Krishna. He places us in favorable circumstances so that we may continue. And in today's class, in today's verse, but before we go to that, we'll also take a look at two other examples. One is Ajamila and the other is Gajendra. So as you know the story of Ajamila, where he was a pious Brahmana, and in the very same life, he got distracted by a prostitute having passionate sexual activity with another man, and he got attracted to that prostitute and brought her home, and then evicted his parents and his wife and children and started living with this prostitute and had 10 children and took drinking and all other kinds of abominable activities, completely fell down from his position. But somehow or the other, at the time of death, he chanted once the name of Narayana. He was inspired to do so by the Lord at the time when he was keeping the name of his last son. It is well-known fact that every father, every mother is attached very much to the last child, the youngest child. So somehow by the grace of the Lord, he had the good sense to name his last youngest child as Narayana. And he would keep calling out his name, Narayana, come here. Narayana, get me some water. Narayana, get me a towel. Narayana, get me the soap. Take me a toothbrush. Like that he would keep saying, and he kept getting purified of all his sins. And just at the time of death, he called out to his son, Narayana, but the Supreme Lord took it as he's calling out to him, and the Vishnu Dutas appeared there and saved him. So this is an example where the consciousness, the effort that is made in the spiritual path of progress and path of perfection did not go in vain. Rather, the Supreme Lord took responsibility to revive his divine consciousness at the opportune moment so that he may attain perfection in that very life. In case of Gajendra, it was a different life. So in his previous life, he was the king Indradyumna, and he had practiced devotional service very nicely. And in particular, he had chanted some mantras, and those mantras he knew so perfectly that even when he passed away and he was given this body of an elephant, and no doubt he enjoyed the body of an elephant as a king of the heavenly planet in which the elephant was born. It is said that this place, you can see in the background of this picture, that it's a beautiful, beautiful, most scenic planet. It is said that this planet was actually the recreational place, like a hill station. How when we want to get a respite from our daily activities, we go to a hill station or we go to some tourist spot. This planet was that tourist spot for the Devatas. So imagine how beautiful this planet would be. So very, very pleasing planet. And in this planet, this Gajendra was the king of the whole planet. He was the king of the elephants, but that pretty much ruled the planet. There was no other higher species over there that could rule over this elephant. So he was the king of that planet, and he was enjoying with his family, and there was just nobody to question him. As he would walk the earth, that planet would shake, and they would tremble. All the other living entities would be very, very respectful to him, and his own family was extremely affectionate towards him. And he used to sport around in water, and then one fine day he was grabbed by this crocodile, massive, big crocodile, a huge crocodile, and they fought with each other for 1,000 years. And and of course, in this planet, 1 year is longer than duration of 1 year on earth, because this is not, this is a heavenly planet. It's a tourist spot for the devatas. So it was a long time. They fought for a very long time, and with each passing day, Gajendra's strength kept reducing because it was water, and Gajendra, an elephant, is an elephant animal of the land, whereas the crocodile's strength kept increasing. And soon Gajendra could not hold on any longer. All his family members deserted him. They were very sad, but they could not do anything. They just could not save him. And seeing that his end was imminent, he prayed to the Supreme Lord in the most wonderful way, with the prayers that he had remembered from his previous life. Up until that point, he had no recollection of those prayers. He had completely forgotten who he was. He had no recollection. But now, all of a sudden, that the Supreme Lord, from within his heart, gave him the remembrance of the wonderful prayers that he had learnt in his previous life. Purvabhyasena tenaiva hriyatehi vivashohi saha. Vivasho api saha. So, avasho hi api saha. So, he was reminded of those wonderful prayers, which when he recites, the Supreme Lord appears and liberates Gajendra as well as the crocodile that grabbed him. So there is a very important instruction that Srila Prabhupada gives in reference to this episode of Gajendra. He says that it is imperative, therefore, that all devotees in Krishna consciousness practice chanting some mantra. Certainly, one should chant the Hare Krishna mantra, which is the Maha Mantra or the great mantra. And also, one should practice chanting Chintamani Prakara Shadmashu or Narsimha Stotra. Ito Narsimho Parato Narsimho Yato Yato Yami Tato Narsimha. Every devotee should practice in order to chant some mantra perfectly, so that even though he may be imperfect in spiritual consciousness in this life, in his next life, he will not forget Krishna consciousness even if he becomes an animal. Now, how many of us here want to become an animal in our next life? Anybody wants to become an animal next life? Nobody wants to become. Nobody wants to become an animal. But nobody wants disease, nobody wants old age, nobody wants death. We do not know to what degree we will be successful in our endeavors in this life. Primarily because our resolve, our determination to continue on this path is shaky. Prabhupada is well aware that amongst all his disciples, there may be many who may not be able to attain perfection in this life. And depending upon our consciousness at the time of death, yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajantyante kalevaram yam tam tam eva iti kaunteya sadatad bhava bhavitaha. So, at the time of death, depending upon the kind of consciousness that we have, the subtle body carries the spirit soul into a new body. And that new body is given to us based upon the state of mind, the state of consciousness. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam, based upon the bhavam at the time of death. Prabhupada gives this example of air that is passing through a aromatic garden, rose garden. Imagine there is a beautiful rose garden, and there are varieties of roses and other fragrant flowers. When the air is passing through such a fragrant garden and then comes to you, you are inside the house, but the air is coming through those fragrant gardens and you can smell that beautiful air, the aromatic air. Even though you cannot see the air, you have no idea where the air has come from. But by smelling the fragrance in the air, you can tell that the air has come from the aromatic garden. Correct? Now let us say you are in Koramangala in Bangalore. In Koramangala there is a city called Bangalore in India, where there is a suburb called Koramangala. And in that Koramangala there is one very aromatic place called ST bed, septic tank bed. There is an entire suburb constructed on top of septic tank. It is called ST bed. And when anybody who lives in Koramangala, there are times when the wind blows over the septic tank bed. And when that aroma from septic tank comes into your house, you can immediately tell, oh, the wind is blowing in this direction. You may be in second block of Koramangala, third block or fourth block anywhere, and the wind may change its direction. But when the wind comes from over the septic tank, you can know that, oh, this is septic tank wind that is coming. So you cannot see the wind, you cannot see the air, you cannot see where it has been, but from the aroma you can make out where it has been. Similarly, when we pass through our life, picking up the essence of all the things that we place our faith in, that here I'm going to find satisfaction. Let me enjoy this. Let me enjoy that a little bit. Let me enjoy my opulent position a little bit. Let me enjoy family life a little bit. Let me enjoy wealth. Let me enjoy prestige. Let me enjoy some fame. All these things, when we pick up little bit, that becomes a collective fragrance. That becomes a collective consciousness at the time of our death. So all the little decisions that we make to stop and enjoy in our life, those are not something that won't have any effect. It is not that, oh, just little bit, no, let me enjoy now. After all, I am chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra. What is the issue? It will get evened out, no problem. Today, let me enjoy a little bit. This particular joy, let me grab this fruit which is hanging from this tree. This fruit, let me enjoy. The moment we do that, that is not something that simply gets erased. It leaves an imprint. It is like that tiny portion of septic tank over which air is passing. That smell will be carried by the air. So that consciousness will get polluted by those experiences that we take delight in, those experiences that we choose to be absorbed in, even for momentary pieces of time, because they are addicting. And while those experiences may keep changing, the addiction for that kind of a material variety doesn't easily go away. So as we make our endeavor to reduce those and increase our absorption in Krishna consciousness, some of us may succeed to different degrees, some of us may not. But Prabhupada is instructing us that we must remember, must chant the mantras that are taught to us by Prabhupada, which are practiced in the temples, Brahma Samhita, Narasimha Stotra, all those prayers. We must really pay attention to. It is not ritualistic. These prayers are not ritualistic. There are other things which are ritualistic in the Vedic literature, in the Karma Kanda. There are several ritualistic things that are there, but this is not ritualistic. There are actually two types of mantras. One type of mantra, they follow ritualistic principles. They are based on ritualistic principles. The mantra is classified based on the principle on which it is based. What is the principle it's trying to promote? Is the mantra trying to promote ritualistic principle? Or is a mantra trying to promote bhakti yoga principles, devotional service principles? Based on that, the mantra can be classified into two types. So Prabhupada is asking us to memorize the mantras which fall under bhakti yoga principles. Glorification of the Supreme Lord without any tinge of contamination of material desires, without any phalastuti, without any sankalpa that we must have an increased wealth, fame, opulence, etc. So without those kinds of a mental desire to obtain some kind of a material benefit in exchange for certain glorification, because there are in Vedas also there are several mantras that glorify. But then those mantras are chanted with the objective of increasing one's wealth or health or opulence. Those mantras which are primarily designed to increase one's wealth, opulence, etc., but in doing so, they create a certain sattvic mentality, a certain purification of our association with modes of material nature. They take us more towards higher modes of material nature, which is basically sattva guna. They are called ritualistic principles. Whereas those mantras which are completely devoid of any material contamination and are direct devotional service. They are purely glorifying the Supreme Lord without any expectation of any reward or return or any material benefit. Those are actually transcendental mantras. And those mantras are what Prabhupada has coached us on. So Prabhupada has given us a formula that you wake up in the morning and you sing Mangalarti. In Mangalarti, there is no expectation of return. It's simply glorification of the Supreme Lord. And then, glorification of our spiritual master. And then we chant Narasimha Stotra, glorification of Lord Narasimha, so that we may remain protected and not get attracted to material desires during the day. To get protection from the attack of Maya, for that we seek the protection of Lord Narasimha. It is not protection from physical harm. It is protection from the attack of Maya. Because we are always protected physically. There is no need for us to ask for that. Physical protection is given to us to the degree that is good for us. Sometimes it is necessary for us to experience harm. That is also necessary. The Lord has the plan for each person that this much harm you should undergo. When you are experiencing harm, you will remember more about me. So sometimes the harm comes, and as we see in the PowerPoint presentation that we have been trying to follow while chanting, that these so-called dangerous positions are actually transcendental adventures when we are under the protection of the Supreme Lord. So this mantra that we should be remembering and trying to practice in our lives, these are the Bhakti Yoga principles mantras. So look at the purport today. Prabhupada is saying, advanced yogis are not very much attracted to the rituals of the scriptures, but they automatically become attracted to the yoga principles, which can elevate them to complete Krishna consciousness, the highest yoga perfections. So those who are advanced in the path of self-realization, when they are not successful in their life, and then they are given another opportunity in the next life, it will be seen that right from the very beginning, they are not very much attracted to the ritualistic principles of the scriptures. Rather, they are attracted to the yogic principles, and these yoga principles, they elevate them to complete Krishna consciousness, which means there is a difference between the ritualistic principles and the yoga principles. And we will see a little bit more about that in a bit. If you see the next part of the purport, here Prabhupada is quoting this wonderful verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. This is an exchange, this is instructions given by Kapil Deva to his mother Devahuti. So after having heard the instructions from Kapil Deva, Mother Devahuti begins to glorify Kapil Deva. She recognizes that Kapil Deva is actually the Supreme Lord. Even though Kapil Deva is born in her womb as her son, she recognizes that this is none other than the Supreme Lord and starts glorifying the Lord through wonderful prayers. And before we look at this prayer, I'll just quote the previous verse before this. It's a very interesting verse. The verse is Yannama Dheya Shravananukirthanad Yat Prahvanad Yat Smaranad Api Kvachit Swado Api Sadhyas Savanaya Kalpate Kutah Punaste Bhagavan Nudarshanat Yan Namadheya Shravana Anukirtanad Yat Prahvanad Yat Smaranad Api Kvachit. That is, even if a person is swado, the word swado is swa adaha. Swa adaha means dog eater. Swa in Sanskrit is dog. Swa adaha. So swado, even if a person is a dog eater, or rather not a person is dog eater, comes from the family of dog eaters, even if a person is born in a family of dog eaters, if he has done one of these things, then something wonderful happens. If he has chanted the name of the Lord even once, utters just once the holy name of the Lord, Namadheya, utters the name of the Lord even once. Shravana hears the name of the Lord. hears about his pastimes. Anukirtanad, chants about him. Yat prahavanad. Prahavanad is translated as offering obeisances. If he simply offers obeisances to the Lord. Yat smaranas, just remembers him once. If a person who is born in a family of dog eaters even does any one of these things, then something happens immediately. Sadyaha, sadyaha. We have seen the word sadyaha before. Sadyohi, what is that verse? Sadyohi, in the beginning of Bhagavatam it comes, no? Sadyohi, Paramo Saranam Shivadam, Tapatriyon Mulidanam, Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kimva Parairishwara, Sadyohi Avarudhyate Shushurbhish Takchanat, Sadyohi Avarudhyate. Right? So immediately. Sadhya Savanaya Kalpate. Savanaya Kalpate means Savanaya is for performing Vedic sacrifices. Kalpate becomes eligible. That means even if a person who is born in a very low family has no experience in having learnt Vedic rituals, he has no Brahminical qualifications, he has no higher consciousness, not developed higher consciousness according to material calculations. But if he has chanted the name of the Lord even once, then he becomes eligible to perform Vedic sacrifices. That is the power of devotional service. So, Kutah punaste Bhagavan darshana. Then Devahuti is saying, what about then the person who gets the good fortune to see you face to face? So even that is the power of the devotional service is so powerful that simply by uttering the holy name, simply by offering obeisances, simply by remembering, simply by chanting, simply by hearing, once, immediately a person comes to the platform of being qualified to perform Vedic rituals. That is the power of devotional service, so much greater than the power than what is the qualification for ritualistic principles. And then so let me just tell you here, let me read some part of the Prabhupada's purport in this verse. Prabhupada says, the persons who are purified by the process of chanting and hearing become immediately eligible to perform Vedic sacrifices. Generally, only a person who is born in a family of Brahmanas, who has been reformed by the 10 kinds of purificatory processes and who is learned in the Vedic literature, is allowed to perform the Vedic sacrifices. But here the word sadhyaha immediately is used, and Sridhara Swami remarks that one can immediately become eligible to perform Vedic sacrifices. Not only is he relieved of sinful reaction, but he immediately achieves the result of all purificatory processes. So there is one criteria for this. Prabhupada says, a person born in a family of low caste, which is accustomed to eat dogs, is so positioned due to his past sinful activities. So because of his past sinful activities, he is born like that. But by chanting or hearing once in pureness or in an offenseless manner, he is immediately relieved of sinful reaction. So the two characteristics that are necessary, one is hearing in pureness, and the second is in an offenseless manner. So offenseless chanting and pure hearing in pureness. These are the two things that are necessary to achieve this state, that even once if you chant in such a purified state of mind, if one chants and hears, then immediately all the past sinful reactions are gone and he becomes qualified for the performing Vedic sacrifices. He gets the same qualification as a fully cultured Brahmana. Taking birth in a family of a Brahmana is certainly due to pious activities in one's past life. But still, a child who is born in a family of a Brahmana depends for his further reformation upon initiation into acceptance of a sacred thread and many other reformatory processes. So you see, just because a person is born in a Brahmana family does not make him a Brahmana. He has to still go through the 10 purificatory processes. And why the 10 purificatory processes required? Because he is not pure. See, the fact that he is not pure is why he is being born in a Brahmana family. It is not that he is already pure. He is being born there so that he can undergo the purificatory process and become pure. But a person who is chanting the holy name in a pure state of mind is already purified. There is no need for further purification after that. So this is a very important point. A person who chants the holy name of the Lord, even if born in a family of chandalas, dog eaters, does not need reformation. This is a social revolution that has been brought about by Gaudiya Vaishnavism, by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then subsequently revived by Bhakti Vinod Thakur and Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, in whose time the caste Brahmanas had completely obliterated actual Vaishnava Siddhanta, where persons who were actually either they would be Sahajiyas, they would not have any regulative principles, and they would claim to be Vaishnavas, or you'd have caste Brahmanas who would say that even if you're chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra, you still need to go further reformation. It is very nice that you're chanting, next life you will become a Brahmana, then we will see. This was the position of the caste Brahmanas. But this Vaishnava Siddhanta, that if a person is actually chanting the holy name in pureness, he is already crossed the purificatory stage of Brahmana. This insight was unknown to people in general and has been brought to us by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and in disciplic succession has been presented to us by Prabhupada. So this social reformation and revolution that is being presented to us is actually a great insight that will not be found in other editions of Bhagavad Gita. So here in today's verse, we are being taught about the transcendence of yogic principles above the ritualistic ceremonies or ritualistic principles of the Vedic literature. So a person who is following the path of self-realization, a person who is taking to Krishna consciousness and chanting the holy name in pure state of mind and chanting offenselessly should be considered to have overcome, already done all the purificatory processes in his previous life itself. And that is what the Mother Devahuti is saying in the next verse. But before that, there is one or two more important points in this verse. Sridhara Swami especially remarks that anena pujyatvam lakshyate. Some caste Brahmanas remark that by chanting Hare Krishna, purification begins. So the caste Brahmanas, they say, all right, you have started chanting Hare Krishna, now you have started purification. But then Prabhupada gives one disclaimer. He says, of course, that depends upon the individual process of chanting. Because not all of us are chanting properly. We are not chanting sufficiently. We are not chanting offenselessly. We are not hearing with the pure state of mind. Because of the process of chanting is not being followed, therefore it may be, in one way you may say that the process of purification has begun by your chanting. But this remark of Sridhara Swami is completely applicable. Which remark? Anena pujyatvam lakshyate. That remark is completely applicable if one chants the holy name of the Lord without offense, for he immediately becomes more than a Brahmana. Usually, so then Prabhupada is talking about initiation. So what is a qualification for initiation? Because a Brahmana, the caste Brahmanas are very proud that they have been initiated with a sacred thread, that they have been born into a Brahmana family, they have gone through the samskaras, and somebody has given them the sacred thread, and therefore they have become purified. So Prabhupada says, usually initiation depends upon the bona fide spiritual master who directs his disciple. If he sees that a disciple has become competent and purified by the process of chanting, he offers a sacred thread to the disciple just so he will be recognized as 100% equal with a Brahmana. So this is actually just by the chanting purification, he has already crossed Brahmana stage long back. But because in a temple, when we are performing worship, somebody who comes in casually, the caste Brahmanas, they object. How he can do worship? How can he read Vedic principles? How can he do yagna? Therefore, the spiritual master, just considering the social aspect, initiates the person in the sacred thread so that others may recognize that he is a Brahmana. But actually, that is not the qualification has already been crossed long back. When the spiritual master sees that this person is already purified by chanting, that purified chanting itself is a qualification. There is no further qualification necessary. But the spiritual master initiates the person so that he may not be criticized by others that he is not a Brahmana. This is also confirmed in the Hari Bhakti Vilasa by Sri Sanatana Goswami. As a base metal like bell metal can be changed into gold by a chemical process, similarly any person can be similarly changed into Brahmana by Diksha Vidhana or the initiation process. Whether one has acquired the qualification of a Brahmana depends on the judgment of the bona fide spiritual master. He bestows upon the disciple the position of a Brahmana by his own judgment. When one is accepted as a Brahmana in the sacred thread ceremony under the Pancharatrika system, then he is Dvija, or twice born. That is confirmed by Sanatana Goswami, Dvijatvam Jayate. Dvijatvam Jayate. By the process of initiation by the spiritual master, a person is accepted as a Brahmana in his purified state of chanting of the holy name of the Lord. He then makes further progress to become a qualified Vaishnava, which means that the Brahmanical qualification is already acquired. So that brings us to this next verse, which is quoted in today's purport. Aho bata swapachoto ato gariyan yajjihvagre vartate namatobhyam te pustapas te juhuvu shashnurarya brahmanu chur nama grananti yethe. So here, ahobata means, oh, how glorious. Swapacho is another synonym for swadaha, swadaha. The previous verse, swadaha was given, right? Swa adaha, dog eater. So here, swapacho, same thing, dog eater, chandala. Ato gariyan. That even how glorious are those tongues that are chanting your holy name. Even if born in a family of dog eaters, such persons are worshipable. Gariyan is worshipable. Tepus tapas te juhu shashnuraryar. Tepuhu tapaha, that means practicing austerities. Tepus tapus te means those who have practiced austerities. Juhu shashnurarya. Juhu is Vedic sacrifices, various yagnas, things like that, fire sacrifices. Shashnuhu means taking bath in all the holy rivers, sacred rivers. Aryaha, the Aryans. Brahma Anuchuhu, studied the Vedas. Nama, the holy name, Grananti, accept. So the translation is, oh, how glorious are they whose tongues are chanting your holy name. Even if born in the family of dog eaters, such persons are worshipable. Persons who chant the holy name of your Lordship must have executed all kinds of austerities and fire sacrifices and achieved all the good manners of the Aryans. To be chanting the holy name of your Lordship, they must have bathed in all the holy places. They must have bathed at the holy places of pilgrimage, studied the Vedas, and fulfilled everything that is required. Because that is the assumption that the Prabhupada says about this, that if a person is seated in the seat of a judge and he is giving judgments, that means it is implied that he has cleared law college. It is implied that he has finished 12th standard. Correct? It is implied that he has finished kindergarten. So the fact that he is sitting in the judge seat and giving judgments on the cases in an official court of law, it is implied that he has finished all the law college and he cannot be compared with a law student. Similarly, persons who are engaged in the pursuit of Vedic ritualistic practices, they are still undergoing purificatory processes. They would undertake severe austerities, and they are all necessary. Those purificatory processes are necessary. So that once they have understood the Vedas, and they have studied the Vedas in depth, they have practiced the Vedic rituals that have been described, then they come to the conclusion, they understand the conclusion of the Vedas, and the conclusion of the Vedas is to render devotional service. So when you see a person who is rendering devotional service, particularly by chanting the holy names, it means he has already understood the conclusion of the Vedas in their past life. Having understood the conclusion that it is the purpose of the Vedas is to chant the holy names, now there is no more attraction for going back and sitting in 11th standard. Would any judge be interested in going back to law school? No. Because having studied law, now the objective is to practice law. You're already practicing law. Why would you go back and study in school again? So that is why it is seen that the persons who are already chanting the holy name offenselessly, and those who are chanting in a pure state of mind, they have no attraction for the Vedic rituals. People may look at this and misunderstand that, oh, he has not yet come. Now only the purificatory process has started. That's why he has no attraction for Vedic rituals. It is not like that. Actually, he has crossed that stage. So this is a very important distinction, because in our devotional service, devotional life, we are interacting with a lot of different people around us, and they're giving us inputs. Our Shraddha, our faith in the process of Krishna consciousness is not that strong. It is easily shaken by something that somebody else says. And when we hear that from different sources, that, oh, look at this process, this is a Vedic process, the authorized process, look at your process, you're simply sitting and chanting. So your chanting is the beginning stage. It's very good that you're chanting. Now one day you'll come to the point of reading the Vedas, Upanishads, and you'll see a lot of people who are pious backgrounds. They'll say that I'm sending my children to study Upanishads, sending my children to study Vedas. And then you'll think, oh, my children don't know any of this. They only know how to chant Hare Krishna, nothing beyond that. So actually, one must have firm faith. That's why it is said, Shraddha Shabde, Suddhrida Vishwase, Krishna Bhakti Karile, Sarva Karma Kritta Hoya. That is just by rendering loving devotional service to the Supreme Lord. That is a complete perfection of all your activities. There is no need for a separate endeavor of any other ritualistic practices. So Prabhupada says that this is a statement of Bhagavatam. This is an authoritative statement. It is not a inference drawn by some ordinary person. This is an authoritative statement in the Bhagavatam, and one should not disbelieve that how, by chanting the holy name of the Lord, can one become a holy man to be compared to the most elevated Brahmana. How is it possible? Simply by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. How can we become more elevated than a Brahmana? One should not disbelieve. Why? It is given in Bhagavatam, not our concoction. That is the Shastra. It is simply people are not aware. To eradicate such doubts in the minds of unbelievers, this verse affirms that the stage of chanting the holy name of the Lord is not sudden. It is not sudden. It is not that one day you chanted Hare Krishna and immediately became purified. It is not like that. Because then you can ask, how is it possible? How is it possible that in one day I may become purified? That's why this verse is saying that right now you are seeing that he is chanting. What you have not seen is his previous life, what he has done. He has taken bath in all the holy rivers. He has studied the Vedic literatures in depth. That is how in this life he has 100% dedicated attention, absorption in chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra. He has no attraction for Vedic rituals. And the example given, Namacharya Haridas Thakur. Namacharya Haridas Thakur ki jai. He was born in a family of Muslims, and they were in a meat-eating family. But even such a person who is born in such a family, he is accepted as higher than any Brahmana. He is accepted as a pure Vaishnava by none other than Lord Chaitanya, who is Supreme Lord himself. And when Haridas Thakur passed away, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally did the last rites. He personally took his body, washed it, bathed it, and did the rituals, and laid his body to rest in a samadhi. And there was a shrine constructed around it to indicate that this is not an ordinary person, pure devotee. His body is fully spiritualized by his practicing of Krishna, by his chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Even today, Namacharya Haridas Thakur Samadhi is a shrine where thousands of pilgrims visit every day. So this process of chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra, when it is done in a pure state of mind, offenselessly, is a result of having completed all the necessary qualifications and pre-qualifications of the ritualistic practices as given in the Karma Kanda sections of the Vedas. One more point that Prabhupada clarifies in this purport is that is the word in this particular verse, Yad jihvagre vartate namatubhyam. Namatubhyam, This is Devahuti glorifying Kapila Deva. Right? Mother Devahuti is glorifying Supreme Lord who is incarnated as Kapila Deva. And she is saying, Yad Jihvagre Vartate Namatubhyam. That is, on whose tip of whose tongue the holy names are dancing. Whose holy names? Your holy names. So, the person who is qualified in this manner, who is chanting, one of the evidences that you see of that is he has got no desire in chanting any other holy name. He will exclusively chant the holy names of the Supreme Lord only. And Prabhupada calls out this specifically, that this Namatubhyam means unto you only. One must chant God's name, not as the Mayavadi philosophers say, any name such as a demigod's name or names of God's energies. Only the holy name of the Supreme Lord will be effective. Others won't even be effective. It won't have the same effect at all. Anyone who compares the holy name of the Supreme Lord to the names of the demigods is called Pashandi, or an offender. The holy name has to be chanted to please the Supreme Lord and not for any sense gratification or professional purpose. If this pure mentality is there, then even though a person is born of a low family such as dog eaters, he is so glorious that not only has he purified himself, but he is quite competent to deliver others. So if you see this right, what is the principle behind a person's taking to this process of exclusive devotional service to the Lord versus getting distracted in many different directions? For this, I would like to quote a few verses from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2. There is a series of 6 verses which I think is very relevant here. This starts with the famous verse, Vyavasayatmika buddhi. Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekehe kurunandana bahushakhahi anantascha buddhayo avyavasayina. So one who is, first of all, a person should have a sense of purpose. That I want to really understand the truth, the eternal truth. The devatas are themselves not eternal. What is the use of chanting those names? I may get some temporary benediction. My material opulence may increase, but eventually it is going to go away. Even in the planet of the devatas, there is a finite life. So what is the point of doing those things? One must have resolute determination that I want the absolute truth and nothing other than absolute truth. When a person has that determination, then the natural step is to take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. So a person who has got that strong faith that devotional service to the Supreme Lord can give me the absolute knowledge, the absolute truth, then such a person, when that person begins to have that faith, he will approach a spiritual master and serve that spiritual master. Because he will understand that yasya prasadat bhagavat prasado yasya aprasadat na gati kutohapi dhyayam stuvam sasya yasya stri sandhya mande guru shri charanarvindam. So this principle of taking shelter of spiritual master and developing this firm faith that devotional service in the Supreme Lord is a complete activity. It is not a partial, it is not a step, it's not something that you do on the side to then live comfortably here. So the first step is to develop this Vyavasayatmika buddhi, or firm determination that yes, I want this highest perfection in my life. That is the first qualification. If this qualification is not there, then it is not possible. Because the persons who do not have this qualification, let us see what happens to them. So there is this verse 2.41 in which the perfection is being described, that a person who has got the perfect determination will achieve this. But what is the contrast? So the contrast is being drawn in a few verses after that. So let us just see what those verses are. Ya imam pushpitam vacham pravadanti avipastitaha veda vadarata partha nanyad asti vadinaha kamatmana swargapara janma karma phalapradam kriya vishesha bahulam bhogaishwarya gatim prati. So these two verses, they are saying that those who are not resolute in determination, for them, they get very much attached to the flowery language in the Vedas. In the Vedas, there is a lot of different mantras which are there, different procedures that are there for obtaining various fruitive results. That you can perform this, you will get this fruit. You perform this activity, you get that that fruit. If you have this problem, you can mitigate it like this. You have that problem, you can mitigate like that. So men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets, resultant good birth, power, and so on. Being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life, they say that there is nothing more than this. Na anyat asti iti vadinaha. So this is one category of people who are very much attracted because they want to enjoy a long life, a strong life, ability to strong senses, because senses here, they degrade very quickly on planet Earth. So if I go to heavenly planets, I can last long life, I can enjoy my senses to the fullest. Tell me how to do that. And yes, the Vedas give you the way to do that. So they are not the people who have got Vyavasayatmika Buddhi. Then Krishna is saying in Bhagavad Gita, 24th verse, Bhogaishwarya prasaktanam, those who are after this kind of a bhoga and aishwarya and opulence, Bhogaishwarya prasaktanam taya abharta chetasa. So their intelligence, it gets bewildered by the opulence. Because they do obtain the opulence. After all, if they follow the Vedic procedure, they will get that opulence. But when they see that opulence, when they taste that opulence, what happens? They get bewildered by that. Taya apaharta chetasam vyavasayatmika buddhi samadhau na vidhiyate. So in such a state of mind, when you're completely bewildered by all the opulence that you see, then resolute determination for spiritual progress does not take place. So it becomes a trap. Imagine there's a beautiful forest in front of you or land, and then there is some grass which is growing, and you're walking on the grass, not seeing that in front of you, where you're stepping on the grass, actually there is water, and you fall down into the water, and it is like a marshy land. You're not able to escape from it. So this example is given, like just as water is covered by grass in a forest sometimes, and animals are not able to see, they get stuck in that. Similarly, this opulence that you go after in Vedic rituals, that is like it appears to be something very nice, appears to be a very pious activity, something that will elevate you. But in fact, it is giving you the opulence that will make you get stuck in a loop, and it's difficult to escape from that. And this resolute determination to progress in the path of self-realization, in the determination and devotional service to the Supreme Lord, it does not take place. And then Krishna says, Traigunya Vishaya Veda Nistraigunyo Bhavarjuna. This comes to most important part. See, all of our actions, they are driven by a perceived shortcoming that may happen in the future. Not even a shortcoming today, but a perceived shortcoming for the future. We are anxious that in the future, something may happen which we may not be able to handle, that we do not have sufficient resources to handle. We do not have resources to handle that, and therefore, let me do something today. 10 years from now, I won't have enough money to take care of my family. I won't have money to take care of myself. My health plan will not be adequate. So let me work extra hard today. Let me build up my nest egg so I have an adequate plan for retirement. All our actions are guided by a desire to increase our security and safety in future. So Krishna says that actually one should become free of this anxiety for gain and safety. Traigunya Vishaya Veda Nistraigunyo Bhavarjuna Nirdvando Nitya Sattvasto Niryogakshema Atmavan. Niryogakshema means becoming free from anxiety for gain and safety. This duality of gain and safety is coming because we are entangled with the modes of material nature. And the Vedas are dealing with the subject of modes of material nature. How do you go from Tamoguna to Rajoguna to Sattva-guna? Then what is the mixture of all these different gunas? How do you purify that more and more? That is what the Vedas are primarily dealing with. But when we are caught in this rat race of improving our gunas and improving that to Sattva guna, actually that does not give us an escape path from the world of duality. Because the moment there is satisfaction, there is also dissatisfaction. Sattva guna makes us more satisfied. But that it does not last, because it is in the world of duality. It is on a material platform. So long as it's on a material platform, the anxiety for gain and safety will not go away. The Vedas mainly deal with the subject of three modes of material nature. Rise above these three modes, O Arjuna. Be transcendental to all of them. be free from all the dualities and from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. And finally, in this series, Krishna is saying, Yavan artha udapane sarvata samplutodake tavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasya vijanatah. That is, if you are able to get some water from, let us say, a small pot, the water in the small pot is satisfying your need. The same purpose can also be satisfied by a great reservoir of water, a big pond, a big river, a big lake. That can also satisfy the same. So you can get your water, go after somewhere, go under a tap and get something, or go to the river. It satisfies everything. So similarly, this analogy is being given that whatever your purpose that you're trying to serve by the Vedas can actually also be served by one who knows the purpose behind them. That is, the Supreme Lord is actually the reservoir of all knowledge. Vedeshcha sarver ahamaya vedyo vedantakrit vedavid chaham. The purpose behind the Vedas is to know Krishna. So whatever the purpose you're trying to solve, by reading the Vedas, by following the instructions contained in the Vedas, no doubt it will elevate you to Sattva-guna, and that Sattva-guna is a platform from which a good quality of devotional service can be rendered. But the same can be directly obtained by approaching the Supreme Lord directly. Because He is, the purpose of all the Vedas is to understand Krishna. So therefore, by approaching and directly trying to understand Krishna, you can actually achieve that purpose in a much easier way and a much more direct way. So this is if a person can understand this aspect, and throughout our life, if we make our endeavor with vyavasayatmika buddhi, with a firm determination that devotional service will actually satisfy everything that we are after. Like the other day, Prabhu was quoting from Krishna book that everyone is after Krishna. And the next line in that quote says, although they may not know it, but you are after Krishna. So we are actually after Krishna, but not knowing we are going everywhere else and trying to get some satisfaction everywhere. But if we can develop that firm faith that devotional service in the Supreme Lord actually will give me everything that I want and everything that I cannot even imagine that I can get. With that goal, if we were able to execute our devotional service, then we can get into the Vyavasatmika Buddhi state of consciousness in such a way that in the next, even if we are not able to successfully complete, which should not happen, if we actually do it properly, Prabhupada assures us that it will happen in this year, this lifetime. There's no need for us to wait for another lifetime. But if, barring some unforeseen circumstance, we are not able to achieve perfection in this life, next life when we continue, we will have this, we would have achieved this qualification, the state of divine consciousness, where we are helplessly attracted to pure devotional service. And we have no distractions from the desire to taste, stop and taste all these different little material pleasures that we might think would satisfy us. So those desires itself would not exist if we were to go in this path and have that resolute determination in devotional service. So I will stop with this and see if you have any questions. Anybody would like to share any important points that you took away online?
Just Prabhu, one point which I was relating that morning, the 10 offenses we also say, the 8th offense, to consider glories of chanting Hare Krishna is one of the auspicious ritualistic activities.
Yes.
Which is either offered in the Vedas as a fruitive activities. So I think I was trying to relate that whatever we discussed, that fortunate that we have given this knowledge by Prabhupada, and we are receiving that secret to achieve that perfection. So which even by being born in a Brahmana families, many may not have that opportunity, but we got to receive that.
Wonderful, Prabhu. That is so wonderful to hear you say that. Very, very clear, concisely you have summarized. Beautiful. Very nice. Anybody else would like to share? Ankit, Prabhu.